Hi, I'm Sarah Clausen, Public Relations and Marketing Specialist with the Tolleson Union High School District. Today, I am with Governing Board President Stephen Chapman and our Superintendent Jeremy Kayes. Tomorrow, we have a Governing Board meeting. Mr. Chapman, you have an announcement?
Tomorrow evening, our governing board meeting will be in the district office governing board room starting at 6 p.m.
6 p.m. And so today we wanted to take some time to just go over the agenda, talk about how meetings are run, and some of the key items that we'll be discussing tomorrow. So at the beginning of every meeting, it's called to order by the board president, and there's just a general list of things that you do every meeting: Pledge of Allegiance, the land acknowledgement. Is there anything else that I'm missing?
We just kind of get the meeting going, do our roll call, those items. This meeting, there's a public hearing on there, so the start of this meeting will be a little bit different, where we'll do a presentation on a budget revision, as well as having comments or questions from the public. Superintendent, want to kind of address like why we do those things?
Absolutely. So when it comes to the budget cycle begins in usually around the June timeframe. We have two statutory dates, July 5th and July 15th. So July 5th is when we have to have a proposed budget done, and July 15th we have to have an adopted budget done. And there has to be 10 days gap between proposed and adopted budgets. So those are required. We normally like to get that process started at our second meeting in June. In some cases, we've even done it in the first meeting in June. So that's to get your budget adopted for the year. But after you have your budget adopted, there's two required revisions. One of them is December 15th, and that is only if you've been notified that it's a required revision. If you haven't been notified by the Department of Education that you have a required revision, then it's optional for the district. A lot of times we like to go ahead and do the December 15th revision, even if it's not required. And the reason for that is when we start the year, so around the June timeframe, we're projecting what we think the student enrollment is going to be for the upcoming year because we're on current year funding. So we have to project what we think the student count is going to be before the first student is actually set foot on campus. And so that's never going to be a perfect science. And so we normally like to do that update on December 15th. And we like to err high on that projection. So we'll go higher than what we think the student count's going to actually be. We'll go higher than what we think the overrides are going to actually be. And the reason for that is tax rates get set off of that adopted budget. If you go with a number that is too low, you are risking that you will lose funding that you cannot recover. But if you go too high, then you just go ahead and scale back at your first revision, which is typically what we'll do. We'll go a little high and then we'll scale it back down in December. The next required revision will be May 15th. That is the final revision for the year. So on May 15th, we'll come back, we'll revise once more, and that'll be our final end of year revision to set the budget at a level that is equal to what we've seen for our average daily membership. The board is always free to do additional revisions throughout the year. There's no limit on how often we can revise the budget, but really those are the three main times that you'll go ahead and revise your budget. You adopt, then you'll do the revision in December, and then you'll do a final revision in May.
And this budget is not our current budget. This is for the 26-27 school year.
No, it is in fact our current budget. So the year that we're going through, revising for the 25-26 year, how much budget capacity we have, so how much funding is available to us to spend because we are funded on the current year. As our student count changes through the year, so as new students enroll or as the students withdraw, it is instantly impacting our budget, and we have to keep our budget current to what's happening in our schools.
Okay. And there is an opportunity for the public to have comment and question during this time.
Correct. Yeah. So we'll have, I think the last meeting we had forms available for people that wanted to either provide comments or ask questions. After I believe there's a short presentation on the number updates, and then members of the public will be able to ask questions, provide comments. We'll have our team standing by for any questions that might be asked, just to make sure the folks are walking away knowing what we're doing with the budget revision before later in the meeting when we do the adoption.
For this public comment portion, is the public limited to so many minutes like they are in a regular public participation part?
Not exactly the same. Usually folks, have only been up there for, a few minutes worth of questions. Our staff provides timely responses. Um, but yeah, we generally try to structure it in such a way to make sure that enough people where everyone has an opportunity to ask any questions or provide any comments that they want to.
And that information is located now on our board docs, our website. So if somebody wants to look over the budget, they can have that information available to them now. Okay, so that is just the public hearing portion of the meeting. And then we will open the regular meeting. So that will be a call to order, approval of the regular agenda. Anything special to those items?
Nope, just calling the meeting to order, and we have to approve our agenda before we start taking action on it.
Great. And then tomorrow we have a celebration. Our VFW Post 40 will be announcing Teacher of the Year and Voice of Democracy essay contest winners. So they'll be there for a presentation.
Yes, and we'll typically have, one, two, maybe three celebrations each board meeting. When we get past the beginning of the year, you'll see us focus on celebrating each one of our campuses. The principals will be able to come forward and give a presentation. But when we're on the first semester, it'll be mostly department celebrations or other celebrations that we need to recognize. And so for this particular meeting, it is the VFW that we have a celebration coming forward with the VFW.
All right. Next on the agenda is the superintendent's update and then also the governing board member updates.
Yes, and for the superintendent update, that one is, typically our PR team does a great job in helping me stay informed on all the different events and activities that are taking place across the district, and it gives a time to be able to share that information with the governing board and with the public, so that way we can try to get more acknowledgement, more recognition of all the great work that's taking place in our schools.
Yeah, and then on the governing board updates, usually a time for members of the board to share if they visited campuses or been to community events or things like that. Just kind of keep the public informed on some of the district events and things like that that we've been to throughout the in between the meetings or throughout the semester or throughout the school year.
Great. Next up is the public participation portion. We typically have several people who come up and talk, and it's open for the community. What are some guidelines for public participation?
Yeah. Main guidelines pretty much are just that, when it's all outlined in the board docs, what's permissible, what's not permissible. We've been setting the, time limit for that. Folks fill out the form ahead of time before the meeting starts. Give it to our executive assistant, Miss Lupita Goodman, before the meeting starts. We call folks up one by one. They're able to speak during their time. I think just one of the big pieces there, that I've gotten questions about is, they ask questions or provide comments and they don't see the board respond to them. During the public comment piece, governing board members are not permitted to respond to the public unless those items are on the agenda. But then we talk about them during those specific parts on the agenda. We still don't talk about them during the public comment portion. So that's really just for members of the public and not really for the governing board.
I think another good thing to point out is there are several districts recently who have moved away from allowing this section on their agenda or moving this section towards the end of their agenda. We've stayed consistent throughout this time. Even when we have some difficult comments to deal with, we've kept its order in the agenda. We still allow for it. If anything, if it's a meeting where, let's say, we have 20, 30 people showing up who want to make a comment, just for the sake of everyone's time, our board president manages, how much time to allot for each person based on the number of people that are coming forward. But we stay pretty consistent with, keeping this available for our public to have an opportunity to give their feedback to the board.
Okay. Next up, the consent agenda. This is also on every single agenda for the meetings. Anything special we should know about it?
Yeah, and we can talk about a few of the items in there. The consent agenda is just one of those things that help the board and the district to just approve some ministerial things, some simple things that don't typically require a lot of conversation. Typically there's things on there like our various hirings and stuff like that on personnel, expense vouchers. So we approve a budget at the beginning of every year, which authorizes district to spend money on various school supplies and things like that. So they spend the money and then we receive the receipts and all that. So that's the accountability piece that we authorize, this amount of dollars for these items. here's the expense receipt for those items. So it's typically just things like that. I know there's a couple other items on here that are just kind of like one
Travel.
off.
Yeah,
Yeah,
gifts
there's
and donations.
travel. Yeah, travel that's like students going to competitions or staff going to professional development opportunities. So yeah, it's just typically like administrative, kind of things that the board has to approve, but typically don't require a lot of conversation and in-depth, discussion on. I don't. Did you want to speak to the MOU on there, since that's kind of like one of those one-off situations?
Yes.
For tomorrow's meeting, for Tuesday's meeting.
Yeah, so in addition to the regular things that you'll see at every board meeting, yeah, we'll have 2 or 3 items that may go on consent that are, something that just happens to pop up. So this particular meeting, we do have an MOU with Flynn that's helping us increase our civics literacy and get those civic seals up. So that's one extra item that's on this agenda. But in the event that we ever do have something on the consent agenda that the administration has deemed as something that shouldn't take a significant amount of discussion, but we have board members who feel otherwise. They're like, no, actually, we do want to talk about that in depth. The board always has the option to remove those items from the consent agenda and pull them out for a separate discussion, and they've exercised that option plenty of times in the past. We have annual contract renewals that are on here. You'll see us do contract renewals either in line with our fiscal years when you'll get the vast majority of our contract renewals, but then we have some that will go on a calendar year. And so, so when we get to the last meeting in December, it's the last meeting of the regular calendar year, you'll see us throw a annual contract renewal up there as well. So these are items that to us, in our opinion, are items that don't require discussion. Um, Sometimes it may be that the board president informs me ahead of time. Is I know you guys were thinking that it's not going to require a lot of discussion, but it is. Actually, go ahead and move that now. Or sometimes it just happens in the course of the meeting where a board member will say, "I actually want to discuss that in more detail," and they can always do that. But this is to help make the meeting run more efficiently. That when you have all these standard items, that you're just running them on one consent agenda, so that way it doesn't take a meeting that could have been accomplished in maybe 2 hours and making it take, 6, 7 hours.
Hopefully not. Okay, and then moving on to the action and discussion items, there are 2 items listed for tomorrow's meeting. The first one is discussion or consideration to approve the first revision of the fiscal year. So that's related to the hearing that was held at the beginning of the meeting.
Correct. Yeah, this will be
Yes.
the time for the board to then have, any discussion, ask questions of the administration about the budget revision proposal. We have the budget documents in our board docs. From there, there'd be, either a motion to approve the budget or motion not to approve the budget, depending on, whatever direction the board wants to take. And then from there, if there's action on it, it's signed and, delivered to like AD and all the other appropriate groups.
Okay. And then the second item, discussion consideration to approve the guaranteed maximum price, phase 1, early procurement and site preparations for our next high school.
Yeah, so this item is for the construction of the new high school. It was almost a year ago today that I was down at the school facilities board. President Chapman was there with me. We had our former CFO Ken Hicks was with us as well, and we were talking to the school facilities oversight board and letting them know that we desperately needed to begin construction on our new high school that we had been planning for the last few years. And the board originally had us deemed for a denial. We were able to talk to them, convince them to approve, and told them, if you approve us today, we're almost ready to break ground tomorrow. It's a year later.
Not quite.
We're not quite breaking ground. We're not quite done yet getting a design approved or GMP approved. So the way the process works, particularly with new construction, is before we can move forward with new construction, um, we need approval from the school facilities board if we want any state funds to help supplement that project, and they do that based on our projected student counts in relation to our current capacity. And last year we got that approved because our projected student counts were showing that they would exceed our current capacity. Our student enrollment has declined this year by almost 500 students. So we're not exactly on the trend line that we were expecting to see. There's been plenty of things that have happened out in the media and politics and other changes that are impacting not just our district, but impacting school districts across the board. That has led to some of the reasons why our enrollment has taken a step back. But now that we're approved, now we can go ahead and move forward with the project. The state will be providing 130 million towards the cost for building this school, but we also have to apply some bond funds towards the construction of this school. And all of that is then covered under the guaranteed maximum price. So that is what the board is being asked to approve tomorrow is the guaranteed maximum price, saying that the contract for constructing this school will not exceed this number. A lot of times it'll come back under that number. That's money that'll be returned to the district, but they're approving that this is the cap. This is the most that you can spend on constructing this new school. We'll have a couple of design options, some new site layouts based on feedback from the prior meeting that we'll be sharing with the board, so that way they know what we're looking at in terms of building the school, and then they'll have to make the decision to go ahead and move forward with building the school. Now, as I said, a year ago, we had plenty of time to hit that August 27, 2027 opening. Um, it's cutting close now. It's cutting extremely close. So we'll have to see how the meeting goes, but it may cause a shift in our opening date if there's still significant more discussion that needs to take place before we go ahead and get moving forward with the project. But that's what this one does is it sets the guaranteed maximum price so we can actually begin pushing dirt around, ordering materials, and start the project.
Okay.
Yeah, and the cool thing about building a school in the other parts of the process, having gone through this with West Point and now this school is, we get a lot of staff members providing input on how their schools are designed and what they'd like to see in a new school. We talk to students to get their feedback because they're walking around every day, utilizing the facilities. The cafeteria is too far. There's not enough seating, outlets, things like that. We get feedback, focus groups as well from community members, parents. It's a very involved process when we're building a school. As far as board meetings goes, we might see 4 or 5 like discussion topics, but when it comes to like the back end work, there's a lot of people in the district and outside of the district that are working to put together a really efficient design that focuses on student achievement, that's affordable, and meets the needs of not just the students that'll be walking in there in 27, but the students that'll be walking in there 10, 15, 20 years from now. And I think that it's just really cool to like watch that process, and we'll hear a little bit more about that tomorrow too from some of the folks that have been involved with our stakeholder groups as well.
Great. I can't wait. I think that's it for tomorrow's agenda. The board has an option to request other items come on to future agendas, and that's it. Anything else?
Yeah, no, just the request for items, future meeting dates, then we motion to adjourn. But yeah, no, I think this is going to be a good way for us to start sharing with you all out there, whether you come to the meeting or just watch us on YouTube live or the next day on generally what's on the agenda, some of the back end information. Obviously, we share a lot more during the board meeting, but for folks that don't always know what's going on right before the meeting, we're just trying to provide some information updates before we get there tomorrow, so you have an idea of what we're going to be talking about.
And just as a reminder, the meeting is going to be held back at the district office at 6 o'clock.